In 2019, all of humanity perished, except for one man, Phil. He travels through every state in search of other people. However, state by state, hope fades away. In the end, the entire map is crossed off. Phil returns home and realizes, why should he live there when he can choose absolutely any house? So he moves into an elite neighborhood and sets up his new home. To avoid going crazy, he periodically talks to God and begs him to send a woman. A new day begins. Phil goes out shopping and practices bowling using whatever is at hand, including a car. 5 months later, the house has turned into a real dump. One of Phil's favorite movies is Castaway, which is why he copies Chuck and creates himself some friends. Gary advises him to befriend a mannequin, which only makes his loneliness worse. Phil gets tired of such a life and decides to end it. At the very last second, he slams the brakes because he sees smoke. Arriving at the source, he sees laundry hanging, and, from the joy, faints. When he opens his eyes, Phil sees a woman who, just like him, had been searching for other people. A kiss brings him back to reality. Phil had seen another woman before, but it turns out she was a hallucination, and the real one's name is Carol. Phil swears that he's a good person and asks her not to point a gun at him. He offers to take her home. Carol constantly scolds him for his bad driving. Even if there are no other people left, the rules haven't disappeared. Upon arrival, Phil apologizes for the mess. Their conversation clearly doesn't go well, and Phil decides to drive Carol back to her camp. But while he's asleep, Carol sneaks into his house and starts cleaning, the beginning of their shared life. To improve their living conditions, Carol forces Phil to go to a hardware store. Eventually, she brings all her belongings. Phil begs her to pick absolutely any house just far from his. Carol is willing to compromise. She'll choose another house, but in the same neighborhood. Though Phil doesn't particularly like Carol, he still agrees to help her restore the water supply. When she wakes up, she sees an irrigation system already set up over her garden. As a thank you, Carol invites him to dinner. Phil agrees. During dinner, he suggests moving things upstairs. Carol replies that nothing will happen between them until they get married. After so many months of loneliness, he can't let this chance slip away and proposes. Carol will take care of the entire wedding preparation, and Phil just needs to find rings. The next day, Phil takes Carol to a jewelry store so she can choose a ring, or maybe a few. The marriage is sealed with a kiss. But just a day later, Phil runs into another woman, Melissa. It turns out she's been in town for 2 weeks already, meaning she arrived before Carol. To stop Melissa from pursuing Phil, Carol says they're married. Melissa is exhausted and wants to rest. Phil offers her to stay with them, but she decides to settle into the house next door. Phil is ready to do anything to impress her. He even shaves off his beard, though Melissa says she liked it more before. So he needs to get in shape and gift Melissa a new car. Carol doesn't understand how Phil has time to buy Melissa a car, but can't find a minute to fix her door. A few hours later, the door is fixed. He's then distracted by Melissa, who invites him for a beer. After a few bottles, she admits she wouldn't mind having something with him, but he's married. Phil replies, "That's not a problem," and heads to Carol to break up with her. But seeing the heart she drew for him, his determination fades. He doesn't want to hurt her. Instead, he comes up with a plan. If Carol wants to repopulate humanity, wouldn't it be better to do it twice as fast? He just needs to stage everything properly, crying. Phil tries to show how hard it is for him even to think about such things. Carol doesn't even want to talk about it. But later that evening, the women discuss everything and accept Phil's proposal. He's overjoyed until Todd appears. Todd says he was about to leave for Mexico but saw the fireworks Phil launched. Carol is glad, because now Melissa won't end up with Phil. Phil asks for a pause. He's sure Melissa won't like Todd anyway. In reality, Todd turned out to be a good man, and he and Carol even had common interests. To nudge Melissa toward Todd, Carol invites them on a picnic. When everyone was ready, Carol pretended to feel sick. The couple would have to go without them. Phil closely watches them and hopes that Melissa is just pretending to have fun. The next day, they have another date, initiated by Melissa herself. Phil is clearly shocked by this news and offers to go with them, just to make sure nothing goes wrong. Arriving at the tennis court, Phil makes Todd take off his shirt. Now everyone knows he donated a kidney. Todd feels very sad and runs away. Melissa runs after him to comfort him. This wasn't what Phil wanted. Then Melissa tells Phil outright that she doubts she'll ever fall in love with him. The next day, Todd tells Phil that he and Melissa spent some time together. Phil tries his best not to show his anger, especially when Todd starts describing the details. Their conversation is interrupted by Melissa. She asks Todd to come over and help her with something. Phil returns home, completely defeated. As President of the United States, he gathers all the residents to hold a vote to ban certain things. To his surprise, no one supports his initiative. Instead, they force Phil to clean out the waste pool. A few hours later, Melissa finds Phil crying. The man decides to turn to radical methods. He drives Todd far out of town and, under the pretense of checking the tires, asks him to get out of the car, then speeds away. Inside Phil's head, a battle rages. One part of him wants to leave, while the other can't abandon a person like that. So he drives back and forth, eventually returning to Todd, who fully understands that Phil is a good guy. A great guy, really, though he could be better. Phil tries to figure out how he can remind everyone that he's important. After all, he is the president. Exiting the building, he's left speechless. There's a cow standing in front of him. He immediately brings it back to the settlement and shows everyone. His plan: to make lots of burgers. Melissa can't believe how stupid he is. The cow must be preserved. To everyone's surprise, Todd used to work at a dairy factory and knows how to make just about everything from milk. Todd begins giving a masterclass on how to milk cows. Everyone enjoys the milk, except Phil, who pretends to be lactose intolerant. He has to wait until everyone leaves to sneak back and get some milk for himself. A new idea strikes him. Phil hides the cow in his bar. Melissa divides the town into sectors. Each person gets their own sector. She asks where Phil's bar is. When the sectors are distributed, Phil tries everything to get Melissa to switch with him. She refuses, but Todd doesn't. In the end, it's Todd who finds the cow, because it had escaped from the bar. Todd feels awkward that Melissa is yelling and says if Phil wants, he can take the cow back himself. Phil doesn't understand why Todd is willing to do this for him. Todd answers that Phil has done so much for him, because if it weren't for Phil, he wouldn't even be there, and he wouldn't have met the woman of his dreams and two amazing friends. The new day begins with another addition to the settlement, this time two women, Gail and Erica. They've already moved into a house and invited Phil over. During the evening dinner, the women suggest a trip to the hot springs. Phil eagerly agrees, but luck, as usual, is not on his side. They run into the trio. Phil pretends that it was all a surprise, that he had planned it from the beginning as a way to introduce everyone. Clearly, no one believes him. As punishment, they stop talking to him. Phil is forced to return to his old friends. After drinking, he tries to understand why everyone treats him this way. Reflecting on everything that happened, he returns to the settlement and publicly apologizes. Carol is willing to give him a second chance, though their marriage is still doomed. In the morning, Gail comes to Phil. She's just now learned that he's only been married to Carol for 3 weeks. If he wants, they can have some fun. Unfortunately, they are interrupted by Carol, who came to pick up her things. Gail reschedules their meeting for a few hours later. Erica doesn't waste time either, and sets her appointment 2 hours after Gail's. Phil has no intention of ruining his life over potentially new survivors, so he starts repainting all the signs he had put up for Gail and Erica, signs with romantic messages. But suddenly, the ladder falls and it's too far to the ground. He's trapped and misses all the meetings. With every passing minute, the temperature rises. To protect himself at least a little, Phil wraps himself in his own t-shirt. Carol is sure Phil would never miss a chance to go on a date, which means something must have happened to him. Phil would have actually died if he hadn't been saved by the other Phil, the one who still doesn't understand why he couldn't just climb down the other side of the billboard. The others joke that there are only 7 people left in the world, and 2 of them have the exact same first and last name. Todd is afraid Melissa might leave him, but she assures him she only likes him. Meanwhile, Phil is trying to make up for lost time. Gail says she's really tired and not tonight, though in truth, she and Erica have other plans. To settle who gets to keep the name, the 2 Phils have to play a game of Jenga. Phil always considered himself a Jenga master, but not today. From now on, his name is Tandy. He and Todd are both feeling incredibly uncomfortable, as if Phil is trying to steal all the women. In reality, Phil just wants to be friends with Carol, though she doesn't like how the other women are showing interest in him. At a group meeting, Phil announces he's running for president. All that's left is to vote out Tandy and hand the title over to him. At sunrise, Todd runs to Tandy with shocking news. Phil has already seduced every single woman. In truth, he just misunderstood. Phil had simply built a shower. But by evening, Todd's words were partly coming true. The men decide it's time to get rid of the new guy. Phil figures out that Tandy hates him, and Tandy doesn't deny it. Either way, Phil is moving out. Now he lives with Carol. During the evening gathering, Phil ambushes Tandy and drives him out into the desert. Giving him 2 days' worth of supplies, he orders Tandy to walk in the opposite direction from town. 20 minutes later, the supplies are gone, and Tandy is ready to die. But Carol appears. She realized she doesn't want a man who'd leave someone to die. She'd rather be with the one who couldn't go through with it. So he has no choice but to get in the car with her. Meanwhile, astronaut Mike, Tandy's brother, is trying to figure out how to return to Earth. But that's a story for next season. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, hit that like button.